We've got some more Montreal Canadiens discourse, courtesy of Elliotte Friedman, and the final 32 Thoughts podcast episode of the season. And it takes no genius to take a look at whom it is we've got on the screen. Boston Bruins center Pavel Zacha is our conversation subject today because of what Elliotte Friedman said, linking Zacha to the Montreal Canadiens once again. He said this regarding Zacha and the Bruins on 32 Thoughts. I heard that there were some conversations. I kind of thought that one of them might be Montreal, but I had a couple of people deny that. But it seemed to make sense. 32 Thoughts, July 6th. Now, I get it. You can look at this tweet and say, Lego, what are you doing? He straight up says in the quote that people denied it. But then again, Friedman is the guy who brought it up in the first place. I feel like for Elliotte Friedman, even though it's very fair to say that, hey, he heard, he kind of thought one of these guys might be. He had a couple of people deny, but it seemed to make sense. There are all these hypothetical caveats that Friedman brings up whenever he introduces these subjects. I get that that can get annoying, but it's Elliotte Friedman, man. He's the top insider on the market right now. If he's going out there and insinuating ideas, he's tossing a bone for us to catch in midair, I'm going to bite that bone every single time, and it gives us the opportunity to dive into what a Pavel Zacha move to Montreal looks like, and it allows us to ask whether or not this is the right guy for the job. There are some replies on the NHL Rumor Report tweet. Ivan Demidov is a Montreal Canadien, said, I've been trying to manifest Zacha to Montreal for over a year. And linked is a tweet that they made last year, talking about Zacha as a potential Canadiens target, and a quote from the fourth period from a year ago saying that the Boston Bruins explored the trade market on Zacha during the season, and there is belief out there that Boston is looking again at moving him. That was 1 year ago. And of course, we all recognize that Pavel Zacha did not get traded. He stuck around with the Bruins. And I'm going to be real, the guy had a solid season. Take a look at this career-high year. Pavel Zacha had 65 points and 30 goals in 78 games played. The Boston Bruins were particularly embarrassing in round 1 against Buffalo, but Zacha was half a point a game in the 6-game stint. Not bad for a guy who, once upon a time, was seen as one of the bigger busts of the 2015 draft. Might I remind you, he was taken 6th overall back then, so a pretty high rank. But it's the fact that he was drafted around guys like Mitch Marner, Zach Werenski, Mikko Rantanen, Matthew Barzal, Kyle Connor, Dylan Strome, and Jack Eichel that made Pavel Zacha stand out as one of the bigger disappointments at the top of this draft class. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to say that Timo Meier has had higher peaks than Pavel Zacha, nor Mikko Rantanen. Even going down the list, you can debate that Brock Besser has had a higher peak in his NHL career than Zacha. And then you talk about the 3 Boston Bruins that were taken back-to-back-to-back in Zboril, DeBrusk, and Senyshyn. The fact that literally only one of these guys ever became a full-time NHL player is embarrassing. We always bring up this 2015 draft like, hey, Boston, they could have had Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat. Those 3 guys went literally after the triumvirate of Bruins draft picks. But either way, that's a tangent for another day. It's all come full circle after all, with Pavel Zacha as a member of the Boston Bruins. He went out there and had himself a pretty decent record, and he was one of the top guys in points on this team. Of course, that's not saying much when the number 1 guy scored 100 points and the number 2 guy scored 68. But Pavel Zacha made things work. You've got a nice Czech connection going on with David Pastrnak in Boston. The fact that this guy was on the market for up to and over a year is quite remarkable when you consider what actually happened with him the season after he was supposed to get traded. Boston kept him around, and he had this really great season. And if the Bruins want to remain competitive, I'd probably say that Pavel Zacha is a necessary piece to keep on this squad. So the fact that Elliotte Friedman is reporting that there may still be some Zacha trade discourse around the National Hockey League, that does intrigue me. And especially considering his thought that Montreal maybe should have been involved there, I'm not saying Pavel Zacha is the best center candidate the Montreal Canadiens could go after, but he is one of the safer ones. If you were to ask me who's a better center in the National Hockey League right now, Pavel Zacha or Elias Pettersson, for example, out of the Vancouver Canucks, I would probably say that on any given day, Pettersson has the chance to be a game changer, but we haven't seen a day like that in 2 years, so Pavel Zacha is probably the safer, higher floor type of option in this NHL climate. Robert Thomas? Okay, Zacha ain't living up to Robert Thomas. There are a number of centers around the NHL that you can say are better than this dude, but if Montreal just wants a solid second-line C, maybe Zacha is the right fit for the Habs, even though some people are going out there and denying that it actually went down. This tweet from Ivan Demidov as a Montreal Canadien said last year that Zacha should be Kent Hughes' next target. Forget that we're talking about Boston, but Zacha is a defensively responsible, left-handed second-line center on a team-friendly contract that would complement Demidov and Bolduc nicely. I think he's a third-line center on a really good team. Exactly, so second-line center in Montreal. Hey, you gotta remember, that was from a year ago. There wasn't really that super high level of play out of Montreal that we thought was going to happen at that point. But right now, if Montreal can get 65 points out of their second-line center, I'd say that's a pretty good deal. The carousel of guys rotating around Montreal's second-line C position this previous year obviously opens the door for 60-plus point caliber guys to step in and be a new center for Ivan Demidov. By the way, Demidov is listed as a center on Elite Prospects, so maybe that's the answer all along. Who really knows? Oliver Kapanen had 20 goals and 37 points. Zach Bolduc is listed as a potential center, but let's be real, he's mostly a winger, and he has been a winger for Montreal. Alex Newhook, Evans, they can both play center as well, but they had 25 and 24 points respectively this season. Although they were both at half a point a game in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. That is remarkable. Pavel Zacha was good in the playoffs too, right? So maybe this actually does fit. Either way, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Elliotte Friedman's thought? I guess that's the best way you could go out there and describe it. He's going out there and saying that, yeah, it makes sense in my brain that Pavel Zacha is a Montreal Canadiens target. Does it make sense in yours? And how do you feel when you hear that the Montreal Canadiens apparently weren't actually involved in the Zacha discourse? I'm kind of disappointed, but then again, if Kent Hughes is really, really aggressive, if he is swinging for the fences here, it's already been reported that the Habs are indeed trying to make a push. Is Zacha the right guy to be overpaying for, or would you rather see a Marchenko-like asset, or, I don't know, best case scenario, Jason Robertson, who really knows? Thoughts in the comment section below about Zacha and the Habs. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.